Let's hope.
Okay, so it's like the theme of the summer has been relationships being tested. The whole underlying theme is tests because I'm noticing this in friends. I'm seeing this in my own life, and some are big and some are small, but the theme keeps being test, test, test. And it's like, have you learned this lesson yet? Because if not, you're going to see this lesson again and it's going to have like new clothes. It's going to be a new scenario. So you like, you know how we'll talk about cycles and you'd be like, okay, I've already been through this cycle. This is cycling back. This is kind of like appearing that way. Um, like I guess only in like the cyclical nature of things. But um, it's more like uh it can look completely different, but the underlying energy is the same.
Completely agree. And I also think that within that like theme of tests and relationships, there's also a big convergence of like the masculine and feminine energy. And I don't just mean between like men and women, but then it brings me to like even now coming to the end of the summer, we're having um that Mars Venus square, which is like literally the masculine and feminine energy. And I feel like a lot of these tests are coming through, like these masculine feminine tests are coming through the relationships because that's obviously the dynamic where those two energies converge the most, if that makes sense.
Well, that actually makes perfect sense because well, it's like me negatively commenting on that one Instagram therapy dude because that was not really like I actually really enjoy his stuff. I'm not going to name his name on here, but I just thought it was interesting how it's like usually I am in pretty good resonance with like most of the stuff he posts, and for some reason I was just like absolutely not. Like it almost felt kind of gaslighty. I mean, without giving context, it doesn't really matter. But it's just kind of like something in myself that I was noticing where I was kind of like, no, no, I don't think so. And it has to do with like male female dynamics and stuff, obviously. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But one other thing that I wanted to say, kind of harkening back to what I said before, was about the energy is looking manic because we were talking about this earlier. And I had said to another girlfriend how it gave me a very like Luciferic impulse. And I know like I'm no expert on Luciferianism and just in general, but like the Lucifer energy can be very light and like super crown chakra, super high, like on your own supply, like new ideas. Like it's not a necessarily like negative thing. It can be like a gust of fresh air sometimes, a fresh gust of wind or like whatever, you know. But um but the danger is getting lost in that, and I'm seeing that in well nothing ever happens at my actual like in my environment. I'm people are bringing that to me, so I guess I'm grateful for that. But it's just kind of interesting that so many people bring that to me and I'm like, okay, you need to like sleep on this, or my best advice is to just like touch grass or something, because this seems almost too good to be true. But this is what I mean about like the cycles are coming back again, but it's just appearing different. Talk about that. I mean, do you agree?
Yeah, no, no. I was going to say the thing with that's where people I think get the difference, which or get confused with the difference between like Luciferic or Luciferian energy, because that's getting into it's inverted light. Like, I mean, he's known as the light bringer, right? So people always I find when I'm talking to a lot of people, they're always like, oh, like this is, satanic or this is Luciferian because it's super dark. But Luciferic energy and Luciferic cycles and that kind of frequency doesn't show up dark. It's not demonic. It's not scary or terrifying. It's actually like it lures you because it is so high crown chakra and illuminating. I mean, he was the light bringer. Like we can't forget that. So it's very
Super
that
distracting.
super distracting, and it's leading you into a trap. Like it's because it feels so good and it looks so good, and um absolutely I feel like people are walking into these traps because they're not using that discernment, which discernment is always the piece there because it's pretty and shiny. I mean, we could get into even the whole inversion of the new age movement, and what does like the new age movement look like half the time? It's shiny and it's beautiful and it's like, so divine and so magical and mystical looking, but that is luciferic energy. That is what it looks like. It brings you and it's magnetizing. I even want to use the word oh my goodness, I can't think of it. It's like it's manipulative for one, but it's like manipulative in a very, it's like negative charisma is like the energy that I think of. Like it's like draws you in and like pulls you in, but then once you're in it, it's like you're in this never ending spiral and cycle that you just can't like find your grounding in or get into.
Well, I think like even just real world experience, because we've all been through something like this, right? Because it's all around us, like kind of at all times. But it's one of those things where it's like, man, I really had to learn that lesson and pull my head out of the clouds. Like even just saying something so simple as that, like, oh, this sounded so good to be true. And it absolutely wasn't. And then those are the red flags that you like learn to discern later because then these things keep showing up. Um, okay, but I kind of want to, okay, so this is loaded with Sandman, like the show spoilers. I mean, a little bit. So if you really were going to watch it, I won't go on to it. I won't go on, but there's so many things that I want to say about it. Okay. Um, so it's interesting that I have to back up even farther. So okay, this is what's happening to me. I'm seeing stuff constantly. So it's like the sync winks. The sync winks are everywhere. Okay, so that means to me, I'm just paying attention. I'm aware of my surroundings. I'm being observant of like my matrix life or my like not like my inner life, everything like this. However, I'm finding it really interesting that it's like I could the energy almost feels like I could latch on to anything and it could be a synchronicity at this point. Or am I being guided somewhere else? Um, and I'm not really sure. So I'm just kind of like sitting and waiting and seeing like what other things come. Have you like, okay, before I go on, like, is this happening to you at all?
Yes, yes, like because I know we have like our like bigger sync threads that like we run through cycles with, and that we have like these like larger themes at play that have been like weaving throughout our lives and like years, years after years after years, layers and layers and layers, and it just keeps getting deeper and connecting and weaving like weaving this tapestry together. But lately it's like, it's like anything. Like even yesterday, um, you know, the whole situation on the day of the Queen's funeral, no less, but the whole situation, it's like I told you I was talking about that um teacher that yeah, like that transgender teacher or whatever. And that whole debacle that's going on like in Ontario. And then what happens? There's a woman running down the street with like the biggest breasts I've ever seen with no shirt and bra on, like
So I
little
think it
like
could have been a synchronicity if it kept going.
if it kept
Just
going. And
think
it's
of
like so
tits.
yes, like seriously, it's like the littlest things. Even here's like another one where yeah, like sync winks, like where it's like I was at my nephew's birthday party on Saturday, and I was going to wear, actually I'm wearing it right now, which is even more hilarious, but I was going to wear this Kings of Leon's t-shirt and black shorts. I didn't end up wearing it. I ended up wearing a dress. My sister-in-law shows up. She's wearing another bit like a Guns N' Roses t-shirt and black shorts. And then today my friend shows up to pick me up and she's wearing a Guns N' Roses like it's like these like little things that I'm like making a point of, and then they keep showing up. But do they really lead to anything, or is it just, and this is even going back to our luciferic conversation, is like, are we getting wrapped up in things
For
that are not
multiple
actually,
distractions, constantly, constant opportunities to lead you astray. Whether so, like for people who aren't paying attention, and even for people who are paying attention, we're all kind of under an attack in a way.
I think it's totally
Yeah.
it, because then I
Okay.
think we're, oh sorry, go ahead.
No, no, that I'm just mming at that. Yeah. Okay. No, my brain's thinking. It's interesting though, because like that's what I mean. Because so many of them seem super benign, and normally when I go through these like waves of whoa, I'm like down a rabbit hole, or like whoa, things are clicking. I'm having that way more often than normal, so that feels good, and like things are making sense, or it's leading me somewhere. And then sometimes I'm kind of like, I think this is pulling me absolutely nowhere. And then I'm just trying to ride it out. But okay, so I think I've told you like I'm having this New England sink. And I mean, I guess it would technically be leading me to New England, but now it's it's like there are names attached to it, like family names, and like geographical places. So I'm kind of like it remains to be known, remains to be seen, like if that's anything. Sorry, my children. Sorry, mom break. But yeah, I don't know. It's just it's been hard to like even decipher if I should if I should be like making my sync map in the background or not, you know?
Yeah, I think it's important to take note of them, but I also think that I have these cycles come up where things start really like, like I said, you and I are always kind of running on these certain things. Like the white horse to me feels like a real sync thread, if that makes sense. Whereas some of these other ones, it's like we're paying attention, but again, I find that when I start to get really close to something, and this is like, again, going back to the beginning of our conversation, I feel like when I start to get really close to something, or there's like, some, frequency up level or expansion happening, or I'm like finding the next puzzle piece, so to speak, is when all of these distractions start to get, um, like it starts to like almost amplify, which is almost misleading because it feels amplified like, oh, okay, I'm right at the precipice of this, but I also feel like it's an attack and a distraction. If Are you following what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, like the waters or the wires get crossed or the waters get muddier because you're getting closer to something good. And then what's gonna happen? Like, our quantum leap's gonna happen and everything's gonna get off track or back on track. Like it depends which way you want to look at it, right? But I was also going to say this, which I'm finding we also have the ability to do. I'm sure you do as well. I'm sure everybody does, but it's just come into my awareness recently that I'm calling it sync by association. One second. Sync by association, literally meaning that like you could tell me what your major synchronicities are right now, or things that you're just seeing. They don't even have to be like causal syncs, whatever, your coincidences, and I'm going to start seeing them as well. And I think a lot of people have the ability to do this, and it could give meaning to my life, but it also could give zero meaning to my life. And I'm going to like put a story of meaning on it, or I'm going to give it some kind of significance. But what if that's part of the like a veil came down, so this is an opportunity, but it's actually meaningless. How interesting that my cat just came to sit right here.
I was literally just thinking that.
He has not. So that's another thing I was going to talk about. These cats are fucking everywhere. I have cats everywhere. They're in my dreams. I've never, ever before dreamt of cats or had cat energy like this. And I mean, I feel like I've had cat energy plenty in my lifetime. But something has changed. So I think that would be for like another chat because that's a whole other kind of thing. But Ozzy is clearly reminding us that we need to talk about this. But yeah, I don't know, sync by association because like even Herb will tell me something like, oh, I saw this, and then I'll start seeing it. I'm kind of like, oh, like it's offering me the opportunity that I could go down that path too.
Yes, exactly. And I completely agree. And I think that actually you and I together navigate that really well because I feel like there are syncs by association where we're like tapping into the same thread. But then you and I also have certain syncs that while we have similar themes, we're actually not like, okay, there's certain things like, okay, the cat's right with you, or like the panther with you, where that's like a really potent, I mean, cats for me as well, but like, let's take the panther, for example. That's like a super potent sync for you. So I'll notice things like that because I know it's a sync for you, which is like also sync by association, but it doesn't have the same resonance for me. But I still take it when I see it as a sync. If that, yeah, yes, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm interested to see like what the energy of fall kind of brings. Because summer was really hard. And so if the theme is like constant testing, and some people are going to be like, I just feel kind of stagnant because maybe they didn't pass. Like, I don't know. I don't like to think that this, God is testing us, or, but I guess I'm kind of Gnostic in that way. And I do think that is true. So,
I absolutely think that's true because I mean, I keep trying to like, I keep trying to tell myself that I don't think that's true, but I mean, to my core, I believe that that is true. And I don't even think it's like a test of like in the literal sense of like black and white, like, oh, you failed and like you know what I'm saying, you never get a chance again or whatever. But I definitely think that's like part of the whole reason that we're here and that we keep coming up to the same lessons over and over and over again because either we rise and expand from them or we have to do it all over again, and that's both on like a micro and a macro scale. But what I was going to say is that even going back to the masculine and feminine, like these relationships and these tests, I feel like going on a more like massive or like macro collective level is going back to like sovereignty and radical responsibility, because I'm finding in a lot of these relationships, we're looking at codependency, we're looking at masculine and feminine energies getting like muddied, and people trying to do like people in relationships really getting confused of where those energies are like centered and how they're balanced and what that looks like. And a lot of the time I'm finding when people are bringing those things to me is that they're actually really confused and really not in their own radical responsibility. And I'm finding a lot of people are putting it on their partner, on their relationship, rather than looking at where those energies are for themselves and how they're entangling themselves in that.
well, you're the genius on the radical responsibility, which is all new to me, I gotta say. We should probably sit down and have you monologue, because I think that would be very helpful for everybody to listen to. But I well, this sounds super mean, but in the instances where I'm seeing these kind of like tests and like this whole masculine feminine theme, I don't think there's much responsibility on either part happening. So like it kind of doesn't apply in a way. I'm seeing it in a very like out of bodied, like it's not embodied at all. It's very out of body. So that's where I'm like drawing from the like, oh, feels like a different energy. Like this is the like more in like the manic kind of thing. But I don't know. I think the dynamic, well, in one sense, like in the collective, we're being pressured to like take on brand new roles and stuff and archetypes, and people are going to be railing against that whether they know it or not, right? Because that's going to come from like their human sense of remembrance and what these roles are, I guess. So if they're going to be easily swayed, I guess there'll be that camp, and then there'll be the rest of us who remember. I don't know. We're going to be seeing that happening worse and worse and worse, I imagine.
I was just gonna say when you said about like new archetypes, and I was gonna like pipe on and say like new ancient archetypes, like where I feel like yeah, a lot of us are remembering like the original archetypes and like really leaning into that energy, and then there's like a whole part of the population that's like so resistant to it, and that's where I was talking about. I feel like where a lot of the um relationship tests are coming through, because I do feel like there's like this expanse and new level of embodiment inside these archetypes, and a lot of people are so disconnected and so disembodied from that. That's where the tests are coming through. I guess that's where I was like kind of more going with it. I don't know if I was following you there correctly, but that's like what was coming through for me while you were saying that.
Yeah, no, that like that I agree with that, and I do see that. It's kind of funny just because this whole ancient Greece stuff coming up, and I'm like, oh, everyone was fucking everyone in ancient Greece. So there were again like wires crossed or whatever you want to call it, but it's just like at the end of the day, ancient Greece, it fell too. Like all these things fall, and we're at the end of a cycle, or like a yuga, or like whatever you want to call it. So we're gonna see things explode. And I can't decide if I want popcorn for it or if I want to be like a part of it a little bit more. That's a whole other conversation. But okay, I'm totally lost my train of thought because I was going to talk about Sandman, because this whole word that keeps popping up in like all my conversations is from that show, and that's the vortex. Because even with all these possible synchronicities or possible like rabbit holes that are being presented to us, it feels like a vortex, and it's like constantly um like literally spiraling, like literally in the word, like spiral, like spiraling out of control. And are you going to remain grounded or not? But it's interesting in that show, like I think the line was, he was like, I mean, okay, so first off, spoilers, show is not good. Like it's technically not good, but there were so many like hidden truths there. I think like I resonated with a lot of stuff in there. um and it was also just kind of bizarre. But like the Sandman dude, his name's Dream or whatever, he says that the dream vortex has the power to create worlds or destroy worlds. And I thought that's kind of interesting, because I feel like that is something again that we're in the midst of right now. Like there are things being absolutely destroyed, but also just in dream time. Like I mean like in waking life and in dream time, because everything feels very not solid, like more than ever before.
I
Sorry,
was gonna,
sorry, I
yeah, no, I was gonna, you just actually kind of brought me when you said, like, it just kind of brought me to, remember that Steiner paper we read?
like the one about the blood,
The
etherization
blood,
of
but
the
like in
blood.
the dream time, and how like the moral integrity of a person and the like auric energy that is like moving through you while you're sleeping. And it just kind of synced for me when you were like saying about um like in dream time and waking life, but like in dream time, like um I forget what the exact quote was you just said, to like not say it verbatim, but it was like creating or destroying. And that just that whole diagram that he had just kind of like synced for me there, in the sense that like he was basically saying like our moral aptitude is determined by determined by yeah, like who we are as people, like our soul's integrity is like amplified in dream time, and then it's fed back to us through, like when we're sleeping, it's fed back to us through our heart coherence, and then it's acted out in real life. Like we operate from that state. And then if you're disconnected, disembodied, or like don't have moral integrity, that auric flow is like stagnated in the dream. And I was just thinking about like, what are we feeding into the dream time? What are we creating, and what is being destroyed? And then how is that transferring to the external, to the 3D, to the waking world? I don't know if I just like took you completely off here, but it like really hit me that way.
No, I really liked that part of the paper. We should probably link it when I upload this or whatever. But I really liked that because it was almost like when you're sleeping, you're kind of sloughing off what you don't need throughout the day and you're working on your vibration. Like that's what I got from it when I was reading that. Maybe I'm completely wrong, but that's how it was kind of like the cleaning service for like your soul while you sleep. I don't know. Does that make sense? Yeah, no, I like that. I remember that part. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like well, these are timely times, we know that. But yeah, there's a lot like at the buffet right now. So we'll see where it goes. But yeah, you have to watch that show just because there were a lot of things that you were talking about like 2 weeks before. It also has the grand theme of like time. And I know we've been talking about time a lot and how it's like we're out of time, or like what is time right now? What time are we in? And I thought it was interesting when people around me, again, and you've heard this too, people don't know what timeline they're on or what time they're working within. I think that's kind of like an important thing to be thinking about, or just fun to chat about. But I'm I'm s- I don't know. I try to always just like zoom out and see. I know you do the exact same thing, and it's interesting what people are attaching themselves to timeline wise. or something like that. I have like the working theory in my mind, but yeah.
No, I was gonna actually like link all these things together. So like previously when you said about like the vortex and like things are spiraling, and then we were talking about mania and like manic, which is like hyper speed, right? Like the embodiment of mania like in a human body is like hyper speed, right? And then everyone that I'm talking to, including myself, I feel like time is going at hyper speed. I feel like everything, like the time continuum has shifted, especially over this summer. Like, yes, okay, we can talk about the past year, but like this summer, I feel like time is just moving exponentially faster. And that is messing with a lot of people because hence I think that's almost inducing um like that spiral vortex kind of energy. And then there, like a lot of people are becoming manic, like again going back to that, are you grounded while all these things are flying in? Are you grounded in this vortex? Are you watching and observing, or are you like being absorbed by it?
Well, that could also just explain why so many things are available to us that we could like latch onto, or it's constantly being shown to us. If time's going that much faster, then it would make sense why I'm feeling like I have constant resonance with my surroundings or with like the messages, whether they're like subconscious or like very obvious things that I'm like pinging in my environment. You know what I mean? Like that could be like how many occasions of personal gnosis do I have in a day because it's feeling like it's more than ever before, which is super fun. Um, because I don't live a dangerous life, but I can also see how in my like friends' lives, if they're not aware of it, like, wow, that could be kind of dangerous. Like if you're not gonna like stop, it's kind of like your situation. Yes, was it yesterday or was it the day before? The whole
Yesterday. No,
no,
it was yesterday.
yesterday. Yeah, right. So like we were even saying how um you were able to stop and like slow the moment, read the energy of the moment and everything, whereas like everyone around you was in pure chaos in the vortex, let's say, and you were able to like step outside of the vortex and like take your time.
With,
um
yeah, no,
yeah,
no, no, totally, which is the most interesting because um I am very I think quickly, I act quickly, like, and I wouldn't call myself an impulsive person. I just move at like a very quick pace. And it was really interesting to witness myself yesterday in what was a highly chaotic situation. Mind you, I am a person who does thrive in chaos, meaning like I can everything stick, like everything slows down and I can like read a situation. But what really came to me yesterday was what I kept saying over and over to myself in my head was context over content, context over content. And that's where I think if we're talking about this, like, time continuum being in hyperspeed and then people being ungrounded and being manic, which was like totally the energy around me yesterday. Like I witnessed everybody around me just in complete mania, chaos, complete disembodiment. There was no thought, there was no clarity. Um, it was all just impulsive action, completely manic, completely like just out of their bodies. And then I was just so grounded. I felt like, oh my God, what is like, I'm trying to think of the scene from a movie where it's like everything around this person is like moving so super
I was
fast.
literally trying to think of what movie or what show we've seen that in. It's probably been loads of them where it's like there's something happening and it's like, and it's just like a soup, and then they get to decide like
Yeah, that's how I
pick your
felt
own
yesterday. And
ending
I
or
kept
whatever it
saying
is.
to myself, I was able to intuitively move through the entire experience, know what was actually going on. I was so connected to like what the truth of the matter was, what was going on, even though the situation at hand, if I'd have taken a photograph, would have told a completely different story. It was like I automatically knew, and I just moved through it without, like, it felt like without any scarring, without any like energetic output, like where I was being like, sucked, like sucked dry of energy. So yeah, that was like really interesting. And I think that is the difference of like you were just saying about the disembodiment and like, are you grounded? Because like while we're moving through this like hyper like hyper speed vortex, um either you're aware or you're not. And if you're not aware, I think that's where the like manic and yeah, like just kind of like like you're like you said, like it's dangerous, like you're getting into these dangerous experiences or situations. Your perception isn't clear, you don't know which thread or step to take. Whereas when you're kind of like observing everything, it's like in the eye of the storm. Like I feel like people who are grounded are like in the eye of the storm and everything's moving around them, or you're in the storm and you're like swirling around with it. The other thing I was going to say too is that with time speeding up and everything um, kind of like amplifying, and we're having all of these like, you know, moments throughout our day where it's like, you know, 90 times in a day, we're like, whoa, okay, over here. Oh, this is happening. Oh, spiders dropping down from my seat. Like all of these things are like happening. I also feel like that speaks to like instant manifestation, which I know that, you know, the whole thing around the word manifestation, but I remember reading a book years ago and it was talking about how um like in through our advancement we will be able to instantly manifest, and we actually find that with a lot of our children that are coming onto the planet right now, and why they get so angry when something doesn't happen right away, because they still think they can just like bring it to fruition in front of them. And I feel like these like sync winks that we're experiencing, and just like, oh, I was just talking to like my husband about this and 20 minutes later it's in front of me, and like that to me is like a tapped in reality of like instant manifestation, like that you're talking about it and it's in front of you, or like you and I have a conversation, 40 minutes later there's a train in front of me. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like it
Well,
feels
I like that to explain what's going on much better. Like that feels good to me because then it's also explaining how like we're coming back into alignment with like the way that we can naturally be, like the human potential aspect of us, right? Because we don't even know how powerful we are. So if that's happening, then that feels really good. And not like a constant like, oh, here's a test, here's a test, here's a test thing. And it's funny because you even just saying that is a sync wink for me, because I think I was just like, I mean, I think this is again a Steiner thing. Like I think he prophesied that as well, or prophesied that, or however that word is, because he said that this would happen during this time. And it's also kind of a nod to like the telepathy, and or was it telepathy or was it the, yeah, I think it was telepathy, um like powers that will start coming online that we and then there's like the, is it going to be the hijacked by like the AI, or are you going to go all natural and get your, you know, your power back naturally?
that, and this is what I was so literally just leading into that. I was going to say there's always the higher octave and lower octave vibration. And that's like, I feel like this can all link together in the sense of like, okay, eye of the storm, you're grounded. Now you're instantly manifesting. You're like, you know, telepathic capabilities are coming back online. You are talking about something and you're seeing it, or you're saying you need something and then it's there. And that's all coming online in this very organic way. Again, going back to even embodying the ancestral archetypes. Like I feel like everything of all of that is kind of aligning. Then if you're in the, you know, whiplash of the storm and you're swirling around and you're ungrounded and you're disembodied and you're manic, I feel like you're going the other way with it. Like if that makes sense. Like I feel like there's a higher fractal lens and a like lower fractal lens, and that's like even going back to the split that they talk about, right? It's like we're all actually experiencing the same energy, but half of us are experiencing in a way of expansion and the other half of us are getting lost.
Yeah, like if you're in the chaos and you can't see your through, like what the forest through the trees kind of thing, you're more apt to like being in danger and then opting for an artificial version of what you could naturally regain or come back into. Yeah.
Which then brings us back to radical responsibility.
Here we go.
Here we go. It always
Here
comes
we
back to
go.
that. Always MK Ultra and radical responsibility.
All roads lead back to being responsibly not MK'd. And knowing
No,
the
but
MK that is within you so that
yeah,
you can not live through it
for those
or
for
live
those
by it. Yeah.
for those that are going to listen to this, is like radical responsibility is basically being in a by me, through me, or of me consciousness, right? So, and then not being a radical responsibility is being in like a to me consciousness. So it feels to me like if you are like even seeking something outside of yourself, right? Like seeking something, like you just said, like seeking some AI or like artificial alternative to ground you out of the chaos, or like to not anchor into your own power and your own
Right. Would that
frequency.
be like akin to a savior complex as well then? Or is it kind of different than a savior thing?
No, no, because a savior complex is still, or like a savior hero complex is, you are looking for quick term solutions and you find your worth through fixing and helping other people. This has nothing to do with fixing or helping anybody else. This has to do with you always coming back to, how am I co-creating my experience? Rather than,
I meant more like people who attach to the idea of a savior doing the work for them though.
oh yes,
Oh,
absolutely,
okay, yeah.
absolutely. Yes, no, sorry, I thought you meant like in the radical responsibility. I'm like, no, no. Yes, absolutely, yeah. So attaching to a savior, exactly. So like victim, and again, victim consciousness is the lowest octave of being out of radical responsibility, because you're looking for another person, another thing to tell you what to do, to save you, to figure it out for you. So if you're looking for something artificial outside yourself to ground you in this chaos, then you are automatically not in radical responsibility. And then you also don't want to take responsibility for what happens to you in that chaos, in that mania. And it's like, we can use that example in so many things that are going on today, like whether it's through food, or whether it's through birth, or whether it's through what you're doing in your relationships, or anything else like that. If you're looking for somebody outside yourself to save you, or you're looking for somebody outside yourself to fix it, or to like you even said, like, you know, gain power through this artificial means, then you are going to like not come out well on the other side. And that's where I think the lesson is, like when we're talking about like the micro and macro lessons, I think that's the bigger lesson that humanity is going through right now. Because it's like, am I going to give my power away to somebody else to fix it, or am I going to do it myself? Personally, I'm more comfortable doing it myself.
Only because the glamours are coming down for like, and you have the eyes to see, because other people are still getting glamored in a way by thinking that they found the way to kind of well, it might not even look like the easy way out or the easy way through something. They're just getting like, whether it's an opportunity or a new person walks in, or like whatever these little like, this is full circle now, whatever these little itty bitty tests and distractions are that are making them feel like every like in a way super high and maybe calm for a moment. But that's again the distractive, I guess, energy, because it's kind of like you can take a breather because you're not going to be taking the responsibility. So for a moment, you do feel calm and you do feel good, but it's never, you're like, you're not moving through it and you're not leveling up in any kind of way. So that means it's going to come back. And then, you know, next time, what's the clothing going to look like the next time? Because if you didn't recognize it this time, maybe it's going to be even more like it's going to do more damage. You know what I mean? I don't know.
That's no, it's, and I think a really good like metaphor. I mean, obviously, a lot of my life has looked through these lenses, but it's like birth, right? And I think the perfect thing is when we choose to put our care for our wombs and our babies and our birth outside of ourselves, when we decide to put responsibility on somebody else to tell us what to do, how to birth, and so on and so forth, it feels good for a moment. It feels good for a moment because you don't have to take on that responsibility if something happens or if you make the wrong decision. But what happens in the end of that is that your birth is sabotaged, and you have actually, you co-created that situation. You gave your power away to somebody else to dictate to you. And when they dictated to you something that ended up harming you in the end, you're actually responsible for that. But a lot of people don't want to acknowledge that. And I think it is full circle, because as soon as you said that, that's going back to like the Luciferic impulses, because it's like, it feels good for a moment. It's all bright and shiny, and you can take this breather. And it's like, you know, sometimes it's not always the easiest way out, but it's like, oh, okay, this looks lovely.